either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And today I've had a little bit of a connection to our detective story. I started taking walks, and I've realized the suburbs aren't very lit, so like between the streetlights feels like I'm walking down alleys.
Especially in our town.
Yes.
There's just no streetlights.
No, not at all. So, yeah, it's been an interesting month so far.
Yeah. You picked the darkest month to do it. Good job.
Yeah. It's been fun. So today we are doing something a little bit different than we've done in the past. We actually are reviewing a more recent film.
Yes.
We decided with, the first episode of the year, we would do an episode on a movie we wanted to see last year, but didn't have a chance to go see it in theaters due to busyness or whatever.
Exactly.
So today we are reviewing Detective Pikachu.
Yes. I was very excited for this movie to come out. My husband was not. And so just because of how the world worked, it fell through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
I meant to rent it from Redbox for ages and ages, and then I didn't. And so now it's technically the next year, and I'm just getting around to watching it.
Yes. So heads up, there are major spoilers.
Yeah, if you haven't seen this movie, granted, I wouldn't say the plot is too difficult to figure out, even for a kid, but yeah, no, we're going to spoil the whole thing.
Yes, exactly. So this is the only warning you'll get. So when I found out that they were making this movie, I was not thoroughly impressed or super interested in it. I was going to see it regardless because I love Pokemon.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up with it, but it just wasn't top one on my list at the time.
And I think part of that was because all of the other Pokemon movie that had come out before this, even though we were told, no, this is going to be from the beginning, live action, this is going to be a full actual movie. They're not skimping out on you guys for this one. We, I guess, didn't take that very seriously.
We didn't, and also because it wasn't part of, like, the mainline series, they did it based off a spin-off.
Yeah, which I think was probably the best move.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree, it was kind of... It was a concept to grapple with, accepting that they were going to make another universe inside the Pokemon universe.
Yeah, well, I mean...
In a way.
I mean...
It wasn't revolving around Dear Sweet Ash.
Or
Ash's Pikachu.
Yeah, and I mean, they did that with the games. They've already explained that all of the games are there's like 2 or 3 universes going on, so
yeah.
This is its own universe. So, it's fine.
Yeah. I think it works. After seeing it, I was very pleased with how the movie came out, especially because they went, as Brian said during the movie last night, they went Zootopia on it.
Yeah.
Which I see what he means by that. They gave us a centralized city that had a problem, and our character from the nice sweet countryside with his own problems is going to find himself and solve the city's problems.
Yes. And because we're in a city, what are we drinking today, Chris?
Oh, so much coffee.
So much coffee. We were up quite late last night.
And I'm sure that many people will consider midnight not that late. But I'm old.
Yes.
And I go to bed at 10 o'clock. So it was very late for me.
We are literally recording this New Year's Day.
We are.
Yeah.
And we got together as early as we thought physically possible, which is 10 o'clock.
I mean, I was up by 6:30 anyways, so...
Same, but that didn't mean I was functioning.
No, this coffee's bad. But yeah, so to give a basic premise of this movie, it's about a young man who finds out a Pokemon-less partner, young man.
Yes, which they don't really go too into in the movie, but it's kind of implied that everybody in this universe is expected to have a Pokemon partner, no matter what you're doing in life, trainer or not.
Yes. And so after finding out his dad's been killed in an accident, he goes to the city to wrap stuff up to...
Okay, never mind. I don't have to sneeze.
I'm keeping that. He goes to the city to just wrap up the loose ends of his dad's life.
And he's portrayed as being a young insurance agent. So, like, he goes in fully expecting to just get the keys, find his father's, most, like, his legal documents, sign some paperwork, and then go home back to his small town.
Yeah. But, of course, with the movie, the plot thickens when he meets a talking Pikachu with an adorable hat.
It is a very cute hat. I would say... So, Ryan Reynolds for this movie did do the facial motion capture for Pikachu.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because Pikachu was facial captured, there were multiple times in the movie where we all commented, oh, wow, he looks like a hardened detective in this moment.
Yeah.
And, instead of just having kind of Pikachu's general blank stare, it was a really nice balance of facial expressions, but at no point did they feel like they were forcing Pikachu's face too much. He was always Pikachu.
And one thing I really like about this movie is really we had one major star. We had Ryan Reynolds. And then we had two relatively unknown actors as the main cast.
Yeah. And I kind of liked that.
Yeah.
Especially because Ryan Reynolds is he was definitely the main acting draw to this movie. I distinctly remember when they announced he was playing Pikachu, it was right around the time that he was also doing Deadpool.
Yeah.
And so everyone was really excited for a Deadpool style Pikachu, which is not what we got, but I'm okay with.
Yeah, I mean,
he was still very Ryan Reynolds.
Yes.
And he delivered his lines like you would expect Ryan Reynolds to give his witty one-liners, and being cut off too early to, keep the PG rating this movie got.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I'm wrong. Ken Watanabe was in it, too.
Which, okay, I think for us, he is a big name.
Yes.
I think he is a new big name for a lot of people, though.
Mm-hmm.
He has been in a crazy amount of movies recently that are all big name, big titles. And you will definitely recognize him when you see him. And we've really enjoyed watching his career. Especially in the last couple of years, because we knew him from his abroad work.
I think the first thing I might have seen him in was the Godzilla reboot.
Oh, you saw him first in Godzilla. He's great in Godzilla.
Yeah.
But Brian and I both knew him from some of his more...
Sorry, Last Samurai was the first thing I saw him in.
I thought you saw that one before.
Yeah, it's just been a long time.
I had managed to catch some of his older work overseas, and then when he showed up in Last Samurai, I was like, oh, fun, they've got this actor. I always thought he was really good. And then he ended up in the Godzilla franchise, and from there he's just taken off, and it's been fantastic. He did a great job.
Yeah, no. And honestly, for the most part, even with lesser known actors in the series,
the acting didn't feel too off, I didn't think.
No. They were...
Which is hard to do when all of your other cast members are CGI characters.
Exactly, because if I remember right, in some of the special features, they mentioned that Ryan Reynolds was only there for 3 days to record his stuff.
Yeah, so, and you might know who this is, and some of our listeners hopefully will. So John Bailey, who is from Screen Junkies on YouTube, great channel if you ever get a chance to watch it. He did a lot of the motion capture and then the voice references for Pikachu. And then Ryan Reynolds came in, and of course all of Pikachu's human voices are done by him.
Yeah.
But that's part of the reason why he wasn't on set for super long, was because he was just kind of putting the final touches on it.
Yeah. Another thing I thought was interesting about this movie is that it was actually shot on film. It wasn't shot digitally.
Yeah,
and
I was surprised by.
And the reason they said they did that is because it was a physical medium, and they wanted the Pokemon to feel realistic instead of a CGI'd in-place creature.
I will give them this. For better or for worse, it worked. Because every Pokemon that came on to the screen, it felt real. Even when it was arguably disgusting.
Yes.
Looking directly into your eyes, Lickitung.
Yes.
Ooh.
Well,
oh no.
And that's one thing that they really did well. At some points, it felt a little off, especially the opening with like everything around you, all the new Pokemon you're seeing.
Yeah.
But they did a really good job of making it feel like this world could exist. Like the Pokemon were in a natural environment.
Yeah, and at no point did they over-explain any part of this world, which I liked because there's kind of only two extremes. Pokemon Detective Pikachu's version, where we don't really explain how someone who has like a really big Pokemon gets around, because they did show really big Pokemon in the city.
Yeah.
They also showed really small Pokemon.
There's a Snorlax.
Just kind of hanging out.
Well, he's asleep in the middle of the road, and there's a Machamp directing traffic, which
is hilarious.
Oh yeah, it's great.
There was a lot of really good background bits on this one.
Mm-hmm.
And because they didn't explain it, you didn't think about it. Whereas a movie like Zootopia over-explained everything, which gave a different style of a very fulfilled world where there's a huge scale difference.
And that's kind of that's the interesting thing too, is that
it's a hard balance to hit.
It is, and I feel that this movie really hit that balance.
It really
well.
did. Especially since we had so much other stuff going on. We didn't really have time to think about that problem until after the movie was well over.
Yeah.
Because while it is more fun to watch this movie if you are a existing Pokemon lover, if you knew nothing about Pokemon, if my grandmother went to go see this movie, she would make it through just fine. Yeah,
and I talked to my brother about this too, because he actually saw it in theaters, and he said I should go see it. But he also recommended that my mom could enjoy watching it too. I mean, at its core, this is just it's a detective movie with an interesting premise, I'll say.
Yeah. And, like, it's not even a complicated detective premise. If you're into the detective genre, you will spot the plot from 4 miles away with no problem. There's no, like, weird twist ending that's going to catch you. But because it has all this other stuff on top of it, it's still fun to watch.
Well, and I even kind of noted it as a starter detective story.
Oh, very much so.
Because
this is a very basic detective plot, but because it's Pokemon, it works.
Yeah, and I am not familiar with the Detective Pokemon game at all. I've never played it. I don't know if you've watched any playthroughs or not.
I have watched some playthroughs of it, but then I stopped. Okay, so you don't watch trailers.
No.
You don't watch trailers or any like bits about movies until you've seen the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I do the same thing with games that I intend to play.
Mm-hmm.
So example being like Detective Pikachu or Luigi's Mansion. I refuse to watch any gameplay from them once I learn that I decide I want to play it.
Yeah.
Which is arguably a very small amount of games, and I still watch a ton of other ones that I will never get around to, because when would I have time?
Yeah.
But because of that, despite my best efforts, my dear husband has not bought this game for me.
Yeah.
Oh well, I'll get it for myself later.
Yeah, and one thing about this movie too, the actress Catherine Newton, who plays the reporter,
the journalist, I guess,
the unpaid intern.
Oh, very much unpaid interns.
Which
I thought was a fun jab.
Yeah,
because of who this movie's aimed at. I think there's a lot of people who went to go see this who are in a similar position to her, or at least they feel like they are.
Yeah.
And so being told go get me a coffee all the time, it was pretty funny.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point too, is that this movie has a lot of adult moments in it, more so than I will say with a lot of kids movies, because like,
oh yeah,
when we watch Frozen, there's those couple little moments where like, okay, there's a joke there, there's constant references in this. But she mentioned that this film was a neo-noir film, which I hadn't really heard that term before, and unfortunately I didn't do a whole lot of research. I think it was after the 50s is when people started referring to films in this style, with the heavy shadowing, the detective stories that were not black and white, and more modern. More
modern, and with more of an emphasis on... I guess I don't know how to qualify the crimes that these movies typically aim at, but like the idea of like a full drug ring and bust and a lord over the city is kind of a similar theme you see in a lot of these.
It kind of makes
Whereas instead of the old ones where we're hunting down one murderer.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me think of Hitchcock-esque movies.
Yeah, Hitchcock, I think, could arguably be put into some of these categories.
And the reason Hitchcock's in my mind is because I recently finished a collection of 50 icons of horror that ended up just being
mostly Hitchcock.
Almost all Hitchcock films, which
I mean, fair.
Which was great because I never would have looked out these movies on my own because honestly this year has really introduced me to the detective genre.
Welcome to the deep dark hole.
Yes. So that's one thing that's interesting about this movie is I feel if I had kids or if I had nephews and nieces, I would, and they were interested in detective stories, this would be the first one or a first one to show them because it's kid friendly.
It's kid friendly in a way that even Nancy Drew didn't quite manage to hit. Nancy Drew, I feel like, was a older kid, not quite teenage, but maybe just almost there. This one, like any kid, I think could enjoy this movie. And if they were into detective work and like the mysteries and the solving the clues throughout the movies, this is a really good first one because it is so straightforward.
Yeah.
Like, you do get the twist. I think as a kid, you'd find the twist as, like, an actual twist. Adults, I think we saw this one coming.
Yeah.
But I think for a kid, it would be a fun, like, heartfelt twist at the end.
Yeah, it's kind of like, because last night we rewatched a good chunk of the first Pokemon movies.
Ah, yes.
And, like, Pokemon the movie 2000, rewatching that as an adult, I remember when I was a kid, and the world shall turn to ash.
Yes.
And that was a huge twist for me because...
because you hadn't seen it before.
Yeah, exactly. It was fresh to us. But, and even then, knowing the basic plot structure... It doesn't ruin the movie.
No,
I think it just kind of adds to it a little bit more.
Well, and I think for a kid, that moment will be, more on the heartfelt, like, oh, emotional, his dad loves him, sort of moment. Whereas for an adult, because this is a Pokemon movie, we all found it a little bit more lighthearted. And not because we were making fun of the movie necessarily, but because the movie gave adults the outlet to enjoy it in that sense.
Yes.
It wanted adults to not take it seriously, and it wanted kids to take it seriously.
Yeah, and I feel it played on nostalgia enough.
It definitely had enough moments where drunk Nico was very angry at the nostalgia hints that the movie was dropping.
Yeah, I mean... You were
very upset with the name of the apartment complex.
Yeah, Oak Apartments.
But the way they spelled Oak was with some...
hybrid kanji character.
So that way, like, you could tell it meant to say oak, but, like, it didn't actually say oak. It was very punny, I guess.
Which, I'm okay with. I mean,
No, I think you were just having a very good New Year's.
Yes, I was. And that's one thing about the city is it's very much a cyberpunk city.
Yeah, and it's a fully fledged city, which I liked.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's interesting is that we really start to see the blending of cultures in this. Because this movie, they wanted it was kind of a combination of New York and Tokyo, or not New York, London and Tokyo.
Yeah, which I think they did it really successfully because some movies, they tell you pretty much straight up front that that's what they're doing. Like Big Hero 6, is a mix between San Francisco and Tokyo.
Yeah.
And they make it burningly obvious.
Yes.
Where in this one, you're just kind of left to piece that together yourself with looking at the words in the background. As a room full of architects, we were all going to town on all of the skyline views that we saw.
Yep.
And then just the basic background architecture and people that you were seeing and interacting with. But honestly, if you weren't looking for those things, it could have just been any city anywhere.
Yeah.
Which I liked. I think it worked.
And that's one thing that I feel if they had gone more, like...
I think if they picked one region, it would have felt wrong.
Yeah. They did a really good job of making it feel like this could be a realistic city.
Well, and the other thing that I liked about this one, which I think... will put it on my rewatch list solely for is the amount of background work that somebody did was astonishing. And I think that's what made this world feel really full and fleshed out is we see not just like the standard hustle and bustle of a background city, but like We get to see people going to a certain space, certain job, people sitting down at restaurants with the Pokemon.
And not only that, it's because, what's the name of the city? It's called...
Oh, I don't remember.
Crap. Well, whatever. The city, Rhyme City.
That's it.
They did a really good job because they did a good job of making it seem like they lived in harmony there, because that was the whole point of the city, is that they don't have Pokemon battles. No. They live in harmony. They work next to each other. So, of course, as a designer of cities and buildings, you're going to have environments for both. Like we see the Pangora and the Pancham.
Yes.
The panda Pokemon, they're playing amongst bamboo.
Yeah, and they kind of set it up to look like this is a little park that you would bring your bamboo-based Pokemon to.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel out of place in the movie, kind of like how other movies that have this, they tend to make, like, divisions, like this is the fire region, the cold region. This one didn't necessarily have that. There was just, like, community spaces put in the background of all of the scenes that really helped flush out the city, and it didn't feel like this city was, even though they say it was built from the ground up by one guy, instead of having it be rigidly divided, it feels more like a natural city.
Yeah, it's not like when you're playing an RPG and you know, okay, I'm going to an ice region now. Oh, now there's a desert region. Yeah.
It skipped over that, which I liked a lot.
We did get to see a little bit of the countryside, which was nice.
Yeah, and especially because it set up the basic premise that there are wild Pokemon still in the world. You're not... Like, not all Pokemon are your best friends. There are definitely still wild ones out there. But at the same time, we gloss over the countryside kind of quickly.
Yeah.
And it only really serves as giving you a background to the naivety of the main character in the city.
Yeah, it really does a good job of showing that he's been there his whole life, basically. Yeah. He's not a... city person. He's
not a city guy, but they also don't play off of him being a country kid very heavily, which I appreciate, because I'm not gonna lie, that little just at the beginning of movies where the country kid comes in and can't work a subway station is getting old. And so I appreciated that while he wasn't fluent in the city and he was clearly not comfortable, he wasn't incapable of being in the city.
It's definitely a fish out of water movie where he's smart enough, he's savvy to get around, but he doesn't want to be there. He wants to just get back home and take care of his stuff.
Exactly, which I think they played really nicely. And then the other thing that I appreciated in this movie, and I will be rewatching 4, was they did put a decent effort into being diverse with their Pokemon that they showed.
Yeah.
Which I liked, because it's very easy, especially as Pokemon fans, for us to have kind of a small group of Pokemon that we love and we expect to see in the movie.
Yeah.
And I will say that some of the movie I expected to see weren't there, as far as I could find.
Yeah.
And other ones that I definitely didn't ever want to see again are there.
Yeah, and that's one thing they said too when they were making it, is that they tried to include many fan favorites, and they started off with, I think it was 60. Yeah. And they said, let's do these 60. Of course, get Pikachu, get the main plot ones in, but then what other ones can we put in to flush out this world?
Well, and I also appreciated that they did put in ones that just kind of rounded out the world in the background, but they also took enough time to pick Pokemon that did complement the characters' personalities.
Yeah.
Example being the lieutenant's Pokemon partner is the Snubbull. I only ever read Pokemon, and I got the Pokemon cards, and I loved it, but I didn't get to watch a ton of the episodes because it was on at a poor time, and I didn't have that many channels.
Yeah.
So while I love it, my hobby for the last 6 years of my life, because my husband and his parents are really into Pokemon, like, very much so. And so I have made it my life's mission to just pronounce all of them wrong.
Yeah.
And it's now a habit I can't break. I apologize. I do actually know the Pokemon. I do like them. I do play the games. I just then purposely rename all of them and then forget their names. So the pink bulldog Pokemon, who I want, I need it. Picking him, who has a gruff, rough exterior, to go with the lieutenant works really well.
Yeah, and
in the same way that the Psyduck really does complement the young journalist.
Mm-hmm.
She seems kind of useless at the beginning, so does Psyduck. Everyone hates Psyduck, everyone seems to hate her, but in the end, both turn out to be very useful.
Yeah, and we see police officers walking into the station with Growliths, and...
There was an uncomfortable amount of Growliths in this movie, I will say that. That seemed to be like the Pokemon of the decade.
Yeah.
But we did get a couple of oddball ones. They didn't keep it all to like pet-style Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
We did see, some of the large, unruly ones, some of the ones that look much more like wild animals.
Yeah.
Granted, I think that they purposefully didn't put a ton of the oddball ones in, like, the front runners spot, because, let's be real, how many people truly want a Lickitung? Especially that Lickitung.
Yeah. And... I mean, there's just one thing that I want to mention about the team that did the visual effects. They did a fantastic job.
Oh, no. Everybody looks, unfortunately, realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the design choices they made with the Pokemon were not the wrong choices.
No.
Because when you're taking a 2D flat fake character and trying to make it look real, some of them are not going to be cute.
No.
And that's just the unfortunate way of the world. But I mean, at the same time, even the ones who are like, again, Lickitung, because that one I can't get over his nasty, nasty tongue. But even though, yes, he is gross, he's kind of cute. I could see how someone would want him.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want him, but like, I don't know, people who like frogs would probably think he's really cute.
My Hero Academia fans.
Yeah, he fits in that category. And I also appreciated that they didn't feel the need to push a bunch of Pokemon to the front forelight.
Mm-hmm.
There's Pokemon that you spend your efforts looking for in the background that you might have had as a starter Pokemon or as your favorite. Like, my favorite Pokemon was Rufflet. I used that little bird to murder everybody in the field.
Yeah.
And, like, he's not in the foreground anywhere, but he is in the background a couple times. And so it's really fun and exciting to find a Pokemon that you really like in the background.
I mean, my favorite's Mary, so that's hard.
Well, and there was some Pokemon, and, like, it's a complaint that I have, but, like, I'm complaining as a whiny, grateful child. Because, like, there's no way they could have gotten all of the Pokemon in there.
No.
It's just not realistic.
God, there's what, like 900 now or some?
I try not to think about it. But an example is for a really long time in the TV show, my favorite character was Meowth.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically Team Rocket's Meowth.
Yeah.
And I don't remember seeing a single Meowth or Persian in this movie.
Yeah, I don't... Yeah, especially with it being a city, you'd expect to see, like, an alley cat.
Yeah,
and
there was a lot of alley monkeys. I was not happy about the alley monkeys, not gonna lie.
Yeah, and
have too many hands. I don't like it.
We also didn't see a lot of. We didn't see any of like the regional different ones, which I was okay with.
Okay,
though.
Yeah, I was also okay with not seeing like region specific ones because we can argue that those region specific ones are in a different universe.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, some of the region-specific ones I think would have taken away from the city a little bit.
Yeah.
Example being our now Lord Palm Tree Pokemon. He would have looked wrong in the city.
Yeah, they did a good job of picking ones that felt like they belonged in the city or they were someone's companion.
And they also did a really good job of, even though we did get to see like oversized or difficult Pokemon to have in a city, they didn't pick anybody who would have been impossible.
Like Wailord.
Like, we see one Magikarp, he's living in a fish tank.
Yeah, which was a cute little touch.
It's a cute little touch, but also, like, that's how you'd have to have a... He can't flop around beside you, I hope.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. That seems mean.
Yeah, and as great as the world is, the story, I feel, was a little... I know it's more of an entry-level movie, but I felt the story just was kind of there for a world-building element.
Oh, for sure. And they've already mentioned that there will be another movie in this world. And I think because they knew that this was going to be, or they're hoping that this will be a franchise movie, we all kind of halfway through the movie just kind of accepted that this was a world-building movie.
Yeah.
And less of a story-driven movie, which I'm okay with.
Yeah.
I think you need that sometimes.
Yeah, and that's just one I have questions about, too, is, like, I'll talk about it later, because I'd like to start getting into, like, the story of it.
Sure.
Just because there are some questions I have about the ending specifically that are related to a sequel.
Okay.
So, like we said, the movie starts off with, what's his name? Tim, I think his name is.
Everyone has very
Tim.
simple names, which I appreciate.
Yes.
Tim and Lucy.
Yes. So Tim is, as we said, he's an insurance agent in, we'll say suburb, a connecting city.
Yeah, it's not a big town. It's not a small town.
Yeah.
It's out there.
So it starts off with his friend dragging him out to a field to find a Pokemon, specifically a Cubone.
You mean reliving the good old days?
Yes. Yes.
Which, honestly, like, the Cubone reference, I think they... Okay, this is one of the few parts in the film that I felt was a little bit over-explained, because any Pokemon fan can tell you all about Cubone. It's one of the first things that, as a kid, you learn about and then are mystified that there are deep, dark secrets to Pokemon.
Oh god, there are so many dark things.
And arguably, they stayed away from a lot of the dark Pokemon.
Yes.
Which I think was probably a smart choice. But we do have Cubone, who has lost its mother and is crying in the field like a Cubone do. And his friend brings him, who has also lost his mother, to the field to meet the Pokemon who's lost his mother, so maybe they can be friends.
Yeah, we also learn that in this opening scene that he's the last one of his friend group that's still staying there. Yeah. Everyone's moved on to other cities, or they've moved to Rhyme City. Yeah,
and the way that they kind of, I don't know, went through that scene, while quick, it was an interesting transition, because you did get the sense that he was pretty happy in his small town.
Yeah.
Maybe comfortable more than happy, but...
Yeah, but we also learned that he has ambitions, but he's also not happy with where he's at, which I feel ties into a lot of people in our generation who we've started career paths, and some of us aren't super happy with where it's going, but we're not really in... we're at a cushy position where we're not...
Yeah, you don't want to risk jumping out of the boat, which I think is one of the bits of the story that does help make this easier for adults to watch. Because unlike all of the previous Pokemon movies where it was mostly a 10-year-old on an adventure, this one is
always the chosen one.
He's so stupid. But this one does give an actual young adult person, not an older person who's already had their career for a while, a chance to potentially look into different parts of their life.
Yes, and one thing that's also kind of interesting is they don't ever really state their age. We only found out through the alternate opening that Tim is supposed to be 21 in this movie.
And honestly, I would like the alternate indie to be erased from all time and space.
Yeah.
It's not... you can skip that one, guys.
Sorry, alternate opening, not ending.
Yeah, alternate opening. There is no alternate ending. You get what you get.
Yeah.
But that coworker feels like maybe HR talks to him a lot. If not, he should be.
Yes, exactly. And so, as we mentioned, Tim finds out that his father's been killed in an accident. Yes. And he works in Rhyme City, and he's a police detective.
Yes.
So, as we said, he goes to the city. We find out quickly that he's just there to wrap it up.
He's not really there to do... His words were, "I'm just here to say goodbye."
Yes. Which, at the same time, we're also establishing his relationship to his dad. Yeah. Like, not only did they set up the world really well to begin with, they set up the story. We get, in the first 15, 20 minutes, we get to the point of, okay, this is who this person is. This is his life.
And I also think that while they did go over everyone really quickly, they gave everyone a very believable, quick backstory. Example being the dad. We're told pretty upfront that the dad did love his kid a whole lot. He just was really involved in his work, and his work was in the city. You can't be a city detective if you don't live in the city. And that's where all of our tension comes from, where instead of giving him more of a backstory, we're just given these little bits, and that's all we're ever given. We're not given any more throughout the whole movie.
Yep.
And it works.
Yeah, and so as he's getting ready to say goodbye, he's going to his dad's apartment, and we meet the reporter. What's her name? Lucy.
Lucy and Lucy's dear beloved Psyduck, who y'all did not appreciate nearly enough.
Yeah.
I've always had a soft spot for Psyducks, and this Psyduck specifically was just assholey enough for me to really appreciate.
Yeah. No, I was okay with it. They did a good job of introducing her, because we also learned that she's ambitious.
She is. She's very ambitious. You got the sense that this is not the first case she's tried to solve all by herself. This just happens to be the first case that works out. Yeah,
and she's very much... I do like the part that they're jabbing that she's an unpaid intern.
Yeah, because she keeps giving herself... And they never really bring attention to it, but she keeps giving herself titles for her job that are kind of the equivalent of, like, me saying that I am the laundry management team.
Yeah.
When in reality, I do laundry once a week for myself and my husband.
It's like, what is it? I've been watching iDubbbz's Kickstarter crap.
Oh, yeah.
And all these people are like, CEO, founder, and creator of X, Y, and Z product or company. And
yeah, it's their small business, which, like, good on you for, like, taking initiative and, like, giving yourself a title you could feel proud of. But the joke is that she does work at an actual company, but she's not even an actual reporter at the company. Yeah. She just, like, fills coffee and goes and gets snacks.
Yes, she's an assistant, basically.
And, like, not even in, like, modern day assistant style. Like, kind of older mindset assistant of movies.
Yeah.
Like, she's probably not booking anyone appointments. She's not taking care of calendar stuff or emails. Nope. She is literally there to fetch orders for lunch.
Yes. And so, with that, we're also introduced to kind of the lifestyle his dad had, too. I actually, rewatching it, I like how they introduced a lot of the characters and their lives, and they did it in such a good way. In the first half of the movie, like the first 30 minutes, they did a great job of just setting up the world.
Yeah, I think especially because we had so much to set up, they chose to go through it quickly but efficiently.
Yes.
And I really appreciated that, because when you're watching this movie, your focus, and I think your focus is meant to be the world and the Pokemon and less about the characters. Like, they're there to drive the world.
Yeah.
And so because we got a quick synopsis of everyone, and then we also got a quick glimpse into what their lives are like. We get a quick look at Lucy and her job. We get a quick look at the apartment and what his dad's life was like. We get a quick look at him and his home in the countryside. And then that's it. Let's roll.
Yep. And that's how a movie should be written.
Yeah. It was very efficient, very effective. It didn't leave any questions during the movie.
No.
Which, that's my biggest pet peeve.
Yeah.
After the movie, I can have all the questions I want. During the movie, I shouldn't have any questions.
And so, at this point, it's the end of the first act, arguably, and we have the plot thickening.
Yes.
We find, we are introduced to Detective Pikachu.
We are. We're introduced to both Detective Pikachu and the drug R.
Yes.
Which I feel like calling the drug R was their attempt at referencing Team Rocket.
Yeah.
Which kind of works, because Team Rocket was always meant to be the bad guy. In this sense, the drug is the bad guy, at least for the beginning of the movie. And so, like, I love Team Rocket. They're my favorite. But I also get it. Where on earth would you put those two idiots?
Yeah, well, not just Team Rocket, like the two, Jesse and James. Like, Team Rocket in general, I would say, was probably the best villains, because they were just thugs.
Everyone but Jesse and James, you mean? Because let's be real, they were bad at their job.
Yes, exactly. But this is... I don't know. I don't know how I really feel about the... this is the part where I'm not such a fan of the story itself. I mean, it's a world set up. We're introduced to this mysterious drug that makes Pokemon go crazy.
Yeah. And, like, I get why they chose it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an easy plot device.
Yeah.
It's a common detective plot. And I think that there, unfortunately, has to be some give and take with a movie that's trying to hit a world this complex.
Mm-hmm.
And so, by picking the drug bust ring plot line,
Mm-hmm.
which, granted, is old as dirt and we've all heard 100 times, this was easier to fill out everyone else
Yeah.
than try and make up a new mystery to solve.
Yeah, this is the part for me where the movie starts to feel very James Bondy, like old James Bond, or
Back when James Bond was bad at being a spy.
yeah, like 80s and 90s Bond.
Oh, yes.
And
80s Bonds are my favorite.
Yeah, and so with this, we're also introduced to Tim goes to the news station where he meets up with Lucy to show, hey, maybe you are onto something. Like, we also get the hint that maybe his dad's not actually dead through his partner. If his partner's alive,
maybe he's
the
alive.
dad has to be alive.
And I will say that while you can see the one and only plot twists coming from miles away,
Mm-hmm.
they do set it up very nicely.
Yes.
Like, him being able to talk to Pikachu is set up so that you think that you agree with the character that maybe he can talk to him because of the gas. Maybe he just inhaled way too much of that purple crazy gas, and that's the reason.
Yeah, and also we're introduced that the drug is a bigger issue.
Yeah.
Like, we're going underground at this point because she's like, oh, it's at the docks. We also find out he's really awkward with women, which that was a weird thing too, is like...
I also appreciate, though, that while Pikachu comes... At no point does Pikachu come off as, like, a young character. He is always kind of portrayed as, like, a middle-aged man detective.
Yes.
Which I liked a lot. Even he isn't very good with his lady advice either.
No.
They just both have two extremes. One's too best friendy and the other one's too old man detective-y.
Yeah, and
so it works that they managed to find a middle ground
Yeah.
to actually be friends with Lucy eventually.
And, I mean, this is one part of the story that they could have done better. They could have been more of a romance between them.
There could have, but I also think that leaving it in this awkward limbo stage is more true to a Pokemon movie.
Yeah.
Because, let's be real here, no one in the Pokemon world from our old movies, I haven't seen all the new ones, no one was very good at dating anyone in the old shows. So I kind of like that we leave it awkward, especially for just them two.
Yeah.
Not everyone else in this universe is awkward. We see plenty of couples. We have lots of talks of different people with marriages and perfectly happy couples.
Yeah.
Just not him.
No. And so, from that, we're introduced that his dad had an informant in the docks.
Yes.
And we get introduced to
the only character I hate.
Mr. Mime.
Oh god, Mr. Mime.
I love that he's a rubber ball.
He's so nasty.
What?
Okay, so we should preference the Mr. Mime bit with the fact that we did watch the old Pokemon movies before we started watching this. And there is an uncomfortable tension in the old Pokemon world with Ash's mom owning a Mr. Mime.
Yes.
Because Mr. Mime is way too human looking. Also, there's just a lot of complicated reasons that we were not going to go into because that's a whole different, like, that's for Pokemon the TV show.
Yes.
Channel episode. But because we went in with awkward Mr. Mime already, the awkward Mr. Mime in the movie was even more awkward.
Yes.
I was very uncomfortable with how much his hair moved. It didn't move like hair, it moved like ears.
Because he's made of rubber.
I know. I don't like it.
But
at the same time, I think they knew people were uncomfortable with Mr. Mime. And I think that's why they picked him.
It also created a good comedic point, I would say.
Especially for Ryan Reynolds' style of humor. Because it gave Detective Pikachu something to be really angry and frustrated at.
Yes.
But we also only have a rating of PG. So, like, we can't get too mad.
Yeah.
But we also do get really close to Pikachu finally saying the F word.
And kind of dark at this point, too, because in the scene, he pours gasoline over him.
Fake gasoline.
Fake gasoline, yes.
But
they have to mime everything.
They have to mime everything. I will also say that Pikachu is a really bad Pictionary player, but that's okay because Tim is not. Tim? Jim? Tim.
Yeah.
This is going to be a struggle. But, yeah, so Mr. Mime might be dead. We might have accidentally lit him on fake fire.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate that they didn't address, because they also don't address they mention the fact at one point where he's pretending to get on a bike and his hair's whipping in the wind, but he's not going anywhere. And that was part of the joke, is like, he's good at miming, it's not real. But then they introduced the wall, which is a power move that he has, which I thought was a really clever way of introducing powers.
Awkward break aside. Cats were fighting.
Gotta break up the ball fight.
Oh, God. But yeah, so,
and so I think while Mr. Mime movie-wise was a smart choice, he's still awkward.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that's the point.
No. And one thing I do appreciate about that scene is that they had a professional mime.
Oh, did they really?
On set. Which is great because,
I mean, it works.
Yeah, I guess the gasoline thing was a classic mime joke, and when they originally did it, the mime's like, that's not how you do that. You do it this way instead. And
I was gonna say, I at one point did watch a documentary about mimes way back in the day, because this is the sort of free time I have sometimes. And so, like, I do know that there's, like, whole schools that you go to become a mime, but it had not occurred to me that there's, like, old mime bits.
Yeah.
Other than the wall and the rope bit.
There's, like, a whole art to it.
Which, I don't know, now I kind of want to, like, find a video of a mime reviewing Mr. Mime.
Yeah. So, awkward scene aside, we go to arguably what was one of the most contentious parts of the trailer and movie. This
was the part that made, I think, my husband not want to go see the movie.
Yes. We find out that there is fighting in the city, but it's all underground.
It's all underground. They need to start investing in better fences. As a room full of architects, we were all very confused on how the audience was not being burned alive.
No.
But with that aside, I did kind of think that the underground fighting was done in kind of a fun way, because in the show, the trainers have to tell the Pokemon everything that they do. Whereas in this one, they did make an effort to explain that, like, the goal is for the trainers to make, like, a game plan for the Pokemon to follow, more or less. And then you train that way, which I think translated really nicely to this universe, especially because we're under the impression that no one else can understand Pokemon. So, having that level of training go into you and your Pokemon would make more sense.
And that's one thing I actually do like about it is, and they explain it away quickly, when he first meets Pikachu and finds out, oh, you can actually understand me. It's the part where he's like, we don't have to understand you. We can feel what you're trying to say.
Yeah, which I think a lot of pet owners will jive with that one. And especially since when we're in the fighting rink, we're not really shown what the other side is doing other than being angry and taking drugs.
And I actually really like the underground, just because
I did too.
It's a cool setting.
It is. It's a cool setting. It was really smartly done. I hate the beatboxing Pokemon, only because he makes me uncomfortable.
But I like that they added that it was them making the music for the club.
Yes, and the way that they, like, while he is an uncomfortable Pokemon, it was a really smart way to put more Pokemon in the movie without it feeling wrong. Yeah. So, like, I don't like beatbox music. I don't like that sort of stuff. But if you were really into music, he would be a good Pokemon companion. So, like, it makes sense. Yeah. We also got to see at the pre-fight between Pikachu and Charizard. Yep. I've always called him Not Dragon. Sorry. We do get to see a different battle and how that would normally play out, since we're given the impression that the battle between Pikachu and Not Dragon is not a fair or realistic fight, especially since Pikachu's a dumb butt and has forgotten how to Pikachu. Which was adorable. It was very cute. He looked like he had to fart really bad. But But because we got to see a proper fight,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one of the few instances we got to see a ghost Pokemon, or at least a full, like, traditional ghost Pokemon from Gen 1. I think he's Gen 1. I don't know anymore.
Gengar is Gen 1.
Yeah. So we got to see, like, an old school ghost Pokemon as opposed to ghost and flower Pokemon. We got to see how that was supposed to play out.
Mm-hmm.
And it does feel like an old school arena battle from the Pokemon games.
Yeah. But yeah, it was an interesting scene just because we get the other side of the city. And this is where it still feels like a detective movie.
Yeah, it still feels like we're tracking down hardened criminals at this point.
And then we find out that the drug comes from a medical lab.
Yes.
And this is where the plot starts to...
It moves from old school detective to James Bond at this point, I think.
Yes.
This is where it feels James Bondy.
So, we also... Yeah, it's interesting because also at this time we have a reconciling between Tim and Pikachu, where Tim comes to the realization that, hey, I haven't actually really been good to him. Yeah, and it's a heartfelt moment, and I think it's kind of plays key to later on in the movie with the big reveal of everything.
Yeah, I also think that this point in the movie is also smartly played because from the beginning we're given the old amnesia throw through. Yeah. Pikachu has lost all his memory. He doesn't remember anything other than the fact that he's a Pikachu. Yes. And so him not being able to battle correctly, I think fits in with that in a way that if they had given him even just being bad at battling, it would have felt really off. Yeah. And I also liked that our transition between Underground Battle Ring and secret in very big quotes lab is a very nice transition because while we do jump cut to it, we are given a teeny tiny transition where he's pulled into the lieutenant's office for being arrested underground. Yep. Which gives us enough of a breathing room that while it is a big jump, and it's a big jump in detective genres or crime genre, it still flows. Yeah, because... Yeah, I mean, it does flow well, because after that we're introduced to... that he gets in contact with the head of the media guy. The founder of the city. The founder of the city, who from the very beginning... we're given sketchy man vibes. You know from the very beginning that he is maybe not in it for the citizens' best interest. Yeah. But you're given more of the impression that his son is more of a scummy person. Yeah. And so that's kind of where the kid-level detective twist was put in. It's a very Steve Jobs feel. Yeah. And I think for an adult detective film, it would have put me off. It would have been bad. But because I know that this is meant for kids to figure out, and, like, especially with it being based off of the Detective Pikachu games, where, like, I think the goal for this movie is for you to figure it out before the end of the movie. And so I think because they went with the very straightforward, like, both people are bad, which one's worse? Yeah. I think it makes it a little bit easier for kids to enjoy. But... yeah, at this time we're also introduced that his dad was on the case for the media mogul. Yes. And he was trying to find the source of the R. And it's kind of a weird part too, especially with how they end the movie. Or, cause the ending I think is the part that you're struggling the most with. Yeah. Because it while everything else does click into place in a very traditional sense, the end of the movie follows most Pokemon themes of being over the top and ridiculous. Yeah. Which fits the theme. It fits the Pokemon world and style. But it does break that traditional, like, hierarchy sort of crime scenario. Yeah. And, like, I like this... At this point, I do like the secret lab. I like all the tech that they're introducing. I also appreciate that while they did keep it very lab-esque, and it did really reminded us of a lot of different... video game labs we've played in. the environments that they set up for the test creatures and
Yeah.
Pokemon were much more realistic than ones I've seen in the past. No one's floating in jars.
No.
Except for Mew, but he's always floating in a jar. Mewtwo, sorry.
Yeah, Mewtwo. And
he's always floating in a jar. That's part of his gig.
Yeah.
Is he always starts off in a bottle.
And I think that's the part that doesn't jive with me either, is that they could have done anything else.
True.
And they chose to just kind of rehash the first Pokemon movie a little bit.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'm okay with it, because while you and I remember the first Pokemon movie very well and clearly, it's old.
Yeah.
It's a really old movie, and let's be real, it's not good.
No, not really.
It's kind of hard to watch. If you were a young Pokemon fan, or even just not an old Pokemon, like an old school Pokemon fan,
yeah.
the Pokemon in it are not correct anymore. There's a lot of bits that have evolved since that time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of characters that arguably aren't relevant anymore.
Yeah. And the other thing...
And more so than just the standard Pokemon way of throwing a random person in.
Yeah. And the other thing about the lab that kind of breaks the world a little bit for me is the Torterras.
Okay, I agree with you, but at the same time, I like it because they... because of the world building sense, because we do know that there are giant Pokemon in this world.
Yeah.
Like, they don't tell you right out that, like, Whale Lord does not exist. You're just not in the city.
Yeah.
So, by creating an extra large Pokemon that, granted, normally wouldn't get that big, but we've made it get that big, I think they're attempting to push and show physically how much they're affecting the Pokemon that they're dealing with.
That's one thing we did gloss over. This is a secret lab for experimentation in creating stronger, larger, more powerful Pokemon.
Yeah.
And they've kidnapped Mewtwo, or captured Mewtwo to
do that.
Yeah.
And so, but a lot of the things that they say that they're doing to the Pokemon, like the Greninja?
Greninja.
The nasty tongue scarf Pokemon is what I call him. So it's on the tank, it says extra strength or something like that. But if you aren't already familiar with what a normal one looks like and can do, you wouldn't know that it's more powerful. So by showing a gigantic earth-moving Pokemon, you get a visual representation of how much they're affecting these Pokemon.
Yeah, true.
And while it is a little off-putting, and I agree it was weird in the vibe of the movie, I don't know how else you would show the extent that you're affecting a Pokemon.
Yeah.
Especially with something like strength. And it doesn't get more muscular. He just gets... He gets more airtime.
Yeah, you're right on there, because, they do show a smaller Torterra.
Yeah. And they... And the reporter Lucy, she mentions like, oh, they don't seem to be any bigger than normal ones.
Maybe this is just the start.
The starting. And so by showing these ones being mountain sized, it does give you a better understanding that like normally these Pokemon that are being affected would potentially be much less dangerous.
Yeah. And from here, I don't know, we're given a touchy moment. Pikachu's injured. Tim goes to help him.
It's corny, but it's also classic Pokemon.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna overlook it.
Yeah. Then we actually run into Mewtwo.
Yes. Who is creepily fleshy.
Which I'm okay with. He's a genetic experiment.
He's a genetic experiment. I will say Mewtwo has always looked off in the Pokemon world, so like his character design isn't the problem here.
Yeah.
But Mewtwo looks like he belongs in Dragon Ball Z's universe, not Pokemon.
Yeah.
He looks like a bad guy from Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, and we have an interesting point at this too, where they give a classic misleading.
Yeah, and like, but again, because of who the detective portion of this movie's aimed at, I overlook it, and it's not a big deal. Yeah,
we learned that Mewtwo's the source of him losing his memories, but while he's showing him stuff that Pikachu is supposed to bring the kid to him, he's cut off because Mewtwo's captured again.
Yeah, and so it's left the two main characters, Pikachu and Tim, to think that Pikachu has gone against both him and his dad, even though he doesn't remember it.
Yeah.
And I do like how they handle this part, because it would have been easier to have a bigger fight between the two characters, which wouldn't have been out of place for the Pokemon world. We see, especially Ash and Pikachu, having tuffles that involve him almost being electrocuted to death.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Ash is human, to be honest with you. But because we have this small tuffle between the two of them needing to find their own purpose and whether or not they truly do care for each other, I think it helps weight the end of the movie more.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's fine. Again...
It's fine. It's not groundbreaking. It's not, movie history.
No.
It's fine.
Yeah. And...
It's not poorly done. It's not well done. It's fine.
And so, from here, we get we get really the last third of the movie, where...
It's your standard Pokemon movie from here on out.
They split up. We find out that it's not the Sun of the media mogul who's the bad guy.
Well, we're not also told that it's not the Sun.
Yeah.
He's just tied up in a closet. And then my ultimate favorite Pokemon finally gets his starring role. Ditto. Okay. Specifically, Ditto is anything but Ditto.
Yeah.
I am a sucker for all of the, fake Pikachus with the weird little eyes and the doopy smile.
I do love those.
That is by far my favorite Pokemon in, a general sense. If I had to pick a starter, that's a different story. Yeah. But, yay! Someone finally used Ditto to his full potential.
Yeah. And the thing that bothers me with... I love Ditto. I love that part of the movie. This is the part of the movie that kind of throws me off, because the whole thing about capturing Mewtwo is that he can fuse the souls of people together.
Okay, they don't really explain this part super great, which, again, it's moved back into old school Pokemon movie territory, so you're meant to overlook this magic bit. I think what they meant to, imply was they can take a human soul and put it into the mind of a Pokemon.
Yeah.
As opposed to fusing the Pokemon.
Yeah, only when the Pokemon's in a crazed state, and that's the whole reason behind R.
And then, of course, we need our Macy's Day Parade, which actually turned out to work really well for us watching it on New Year's.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the gases in the balloons, as it always is.
Yeah.
But, because this is meant to be an introductory movie to old school detective thought and plot, I'm not mad at it.
Yeah.
It also gives us a chance to put in classic cartoon Pokemon without them feeling off in the movie.
Yeah, it made me think of that stage in Super Smash Bros.
Yeah.
The Pokefloat stage.
Yes, it definitely reminds me of that. There's a lot of bouncing through skyscrapers and off of balloons way up in the air. There's a lot of impossible acrobatics that just happen to work out accidentally. But again, this is old school Pokemon style, and so it works.
Yeah, and so from this, we get the plot that his dad's soul has been in Pikachu the whole time.
Yes, and it's very touching. I do like how they did this. While as an adult audience, we saw this coming from the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
I liked that they gave enough effort to give fake plot points for why he could hear Pikachu. They gave fake plot points for where his dad was.
Yeah.
So while this was really obvious, I liked it. And I also feel like they paced this part of the movie really nicely.
Yeah, no, I will say, as much as I have issues with some of the plot points, it is a well-paced movie. Things happen. It doesn't drag on too long.
No, you don't get bored watching it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, it's a fine movie.
Yeah, and so at this point, we're at the very end of the film. We're introduced to his dad, Detective Pikachu. The whole reason Mewtwo needed him was because his dad was dying, and he could only save him by using his son.
So this part is also not explained.
No.
But as with everything frickin' Mewtwo ever in the history of Pokemon, we not really ever fully explained what Mewtwo's powers are, what his limitations are, so you're just supposed to accept that this is what he has to do to get Ryan Reynolds back.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's not a plot-breaking part. It does lead to the theory behind Mewtwo potentially being kind of omnipotent and wanting them to have this bonding experience throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
Like, it leads to a lot of fun theories and explanations and reasoning. So I'm not mad at it. It's not great. It's not my favorite thing ever.
Yeah.
But also I'm not mad at it.
And it's interesting too because like we do have it's a good ending for what it is. Lucy is recognized by the son of the media mogul, and she's gonna report on the news now. She's proved herself.
She's proved herself, and she's not going to just get to report on it. She's going to be in front of the camera reporting on this big breaking story.
Yes.
So like this is her biggest break of her entire life. This has set her. She's good now. Yeah. And her weird Psyduck.
Yeah, and then
managed to make it through the whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good ending. The dad and son reconcile.
The city promises probably never to have a float again.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding, but that would be funny.
The son's planning to go, or Tim's planning to go back to the country, and I hate this part because he throws away the ticket.
Yeah, no, okay, I'm glad you pointed that out too. It was an impactful moment, and like I think. If they had done it any other way, I also would have complained. Yeah. Especially, like, as a kid watching it, this makes more sense. But yeah, so Tim's got his train ticket in his hand, and he's like, Dad, can I stay with you? And of course, Ryan Reynolds, detective, says, oh yes, I'd love that. And so he just throws his ticket in the trash. Yeah. No! Like, go back to the counter and get your refund, son.
Yeah.
But, you know, I see why they chose to visually, like, emphasize that. It shows a commitment to him staying, as opposed to, like, changing his mind 5 minutes later after the movie's over.
Then they walk off into the sunset to go get a cup of coffee. Yeah. A cup of Joe.
And while it is a very corny ending, it fits in with the rest of the Pokemon style, just like everything else in this movie had so far. And so while I am not in love with the ending of this movie, I also fine. Yeah, like I don't see a way to get the same result in a different way.
Yeah. No, overall, I think they did a great job with it. Like,
I do too.
It could have been much worse.
Oh, it could have been. It could have been so much worse.
I don't have hopes for all the other nostalgic movies that are coming out.
Well, and you and I have put our nostalgia bar real low after Death Note, I think. Oh, God. And honestly, I put mine real low after Dragon Ball Z, the live-action movie. And just kind of, if everything's better than that movie, I will happily accept it. And so, like, this one, I think this one did a phenomenal job. Yeah. Arguably the best live-action remake that I have seen recently.
Yeah, and I mean, with watching Alita Battle Angel, that was a good movie, but they skipped over. It felt like
there was a lot that they missed.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also think that one missed with people who weren't into the Battle Angel franchise. Yeah. Like, there was a lot of people who were confused by it. Same thing with Ghost in the Shell. There was we loved that movie, but we also grew up reading and watching it. Well, and so there's a lot of people who didn't get it.
Yeah, and I think that's
fair.
That's one point I wanted to talk about with this movie is, like, at what point as filmmakers, do they have to put nostalgia to the past and create something original?
And that's always going to be a hard question. And I think part of the problem that recent filmmakers have been having is a lot of the nostalgia movies and TV shows that we grew up watching, and we would love to see a remake of, a live action specifically of, they are old enough now that a lot of the younger generation, even if they're into this genre, haven't gotten around to yet. Yes. They're either not old enough to appreciate the dark grittiness of it.
Like, last month we had the reboot of Black Christmas, which I heard bombed. And Friday we have the remake of The Grudge coming out.
Yeah, and, like, arguably kids like my younger brother, who he's now old enough to appreciate that sort of stuff. He hasn't had the time to build the nostalgia or the memories of the old original stuff to appreciate what the new interpretation is. And so the reason why I think I am making the argument that Detective Pikachu is the current best live action remake of anything so far is because Pokemon is yet to die. It is still incredibly prevalent. We've gotten a new game this year, or technically last year. We've got Pokemon Go didn't just have a wave of success. It is still having its success wave. Even if you're not playing it anymore, you will find someone who is, I promise.
Yeah.
Just ask. But at the same time, they chose to pick a new method to tell the story.
Yes.
And I think that is... Oh, my computer died. Oh well, we're done. I think that's why this movie, for me anyway, puts itself in the best category.
Yeah.
I know that this movie currently is the best selling, or it has made the most money for a live action remake. I think it recently beat Warcraft, which was the first for a long time. And I loved Warcraft. I'm not a World of Warcraft player. I watch other people play it, specifically Peacecraft. That is by far my favorite version of it to play. Or watch people play, because I ain't got the time. But I can see why Warcraft, critically and in a general sense, didn't hit the same as Detective Pikachu did. Because if you're not really into Warcraft, there was a lot of stuff that went over your head.
Yeah.
Whereas with Detective Pikachu, they took time to explain the necessity parts, and then they left out all of the extra bits that you don't need for this movie.
And I think that's what's great about this one, is that they put all that work into it, but they did it with the spin-off.
Yes.
And I think that's what led to the success of this movie, is because it wasn't a mainline title.
It wasn't a mainline title, and it also only focused on itself.
Yes.
It didn't bother to introduce the concept of Pokemon training.
Nope.
It didn't talk about how 10-year-olds are roaming the countryside with a rat. Like, it left off a lot of things that a normal Pokemon movie has to address if the audience is going to get it. This one just makes its own world using the Pokemon rules.
Yep.
And it works that way.
Exactly.
I think this is what a lot of the live action ones were missing. Like Death Note. It took too long to explain the entire universe, and then we didn't have time for the actual story that it was trying to tell.
And the story was garbage. And that's the thing.
Yeah, the story was garbage. But, like, I think it could have been better if we'd had time to flush it out.
Even with my issues with the story of this movie, it's still well done.
It is still well done. And I think while you and I have issues with the story, and most of those issues are with our questions about what a sequel would look like for this.
Yes. That...
I think because we have questions, that is actually the best end possibility. It doesn't lead you to a sequel. It doesn't guarantee you a sequel. But if one came about, you wouldn't have any expectations for it.
Exactly.
You wouldn't have any plot expectations or loose ends that need tying up. They're free to do whatever they want now with this universe.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because when I saw the movie, I finished it, and I'm like, well, that was a cute one-off. And then I read that before the movie even came out,
they knew
they were going to make a sequel. And I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it. I'm curious how they're going to do it, especially with, like, this is my point of why I appreciate this movie so much, is because it is a starter movie, and even though they announced that they're making a universe based off of it, they made a good movie.
They did.
And that's the issue with, like, all these other studios say, oh, we're going to make a trilogy, we're going to make...
Or a whole universe.
A whole universe, yeah. That's...
Looking at you, DC.
And Universal Monsters.
They tried.
And I mean, we have that. This movie does a great job of balancing that nostalgia and making something new, because the shit show that the Star Wars trilogy has been, the more I think about it, the more and more I get annoyed with it.
Yeah, and I know you're not the only one. I've had to listen to the same complaint from many people. And
last one, Abrams did a fine job with wrapping up the shit show that was The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that they just couldn't scratch The Last Jedi off and be like, okay, this movie doesn't exist.
Well, and the other problem that especially universes like DC, like Star Wars, even Godzilla's universe is having at the moment is they are stuck with a certain cast of characters, and because they keep leaving the endings of their movies open, you have to address those people.
Yeah.
The closest I think we've gotten is the current Mandalorian series, where we're in the same universe. We definitely have characters who are recurring, or species that are recurring.
I hate Baby Yoda.
I know you do.
I haven't seen The Mandalorian yet. To be fair, I'm sure it's fine in the plot. I just hate the memes. I'm tired of it. There's a lot of pictures of him just kind of holding coffee cups going around right now. But yeah, in the show he's much more
desirable.
Yeah.
But
I'll get around to it.
Yeah, just wait for all of them to come out, I think. But that's kind of the catching point that those franchises have been having, is you can only take Godzilla so far before you're out of nostalgia to run him on, or your plot is now got holes in it. With Detective Pikachu, honestly, if the next Detective Pikachu movie doesn't have anything to do with Tim, Detective Pikachu, or his dad, I won't be upset.
Yeah.
Honestly, even if it's only about Detective Pikachu and the two human actors are someone else entirely, I'd also be okay with it.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
I mean, I'd be okay with a prequel movie. I'd be okay with a sequel.
I'd even be okay with a more game-based detective one where it's even more detective-y than this one was.
Or if they introduce a new team, new underground thugs.
Or we had jokingly, but I think it actually might be really cool, like finally introduce Team Rocket as the new bad guy. Like, or even arguably Jesse and James on Team Rocket as the good guys accidentally breaking up their own gang, which would be hilarious. But like, honestly, because the world is so open and the characters their story's finished, it could be anything. And honestly, even if we don't get a sequel, I'm not going to be upset. No. I'm not going to have a Van Helsing moment of like me waiting for decades and decades to finally understand why he's the left hand of God.
Yeah. Yeah. It was good.
It was good.
So, I know we've gushed over this movie for...
yes. A while.
Chris, in conclusion, what would you rate this movie?
For me, as someone who truly, honestly does enjoy children's movies, I watch them on my own free will frequently. This movie's fantastic. It's easily a 10 out of 10 for me. I will definitely rewatch it. There's so much in the background going on. There's so many little hints here and there to different things that I know I missed. T-shirts, hat designs, characters in the background. I will probably watch this multiple times this year. Yeah. So I think this is a must-watch, especially if you like Pokemon. Yeah.
I would have recommended, if you have the nostalgia for Pokemon, I would have recommended seeing this in theaters, honestly.
Yeah, this would have been a great theater watch.
As for recommending it for someone who's a little older and just not into Pokemon or was into the nostalgia, I don't know if I can really recommend this movie to them.
I think if you're in that category, but you're still curious, the best way to watch this would probably be find a kid to babysit, even if it's your own kid, and watch it with them.
Oh, piss off parents so much.
But at the same time, if you're gonna be forced... Okay, and as someone I was a kid who watched the same movie over and over and over again, and then I babysat kids who watched the same movie over and over and over again. If you're gonna be forced to watch the same movie over and over and over again, this isn't a bad one to pick. There's no sing-alongs that are going to get stuck in your head.
Oh, thank God.
The music, while good, is not hummable. It's not memorable. It's all beatboxy for the most part, as far as like outstanding soundtracks go.
Yeah, it's very fitting for the city.
It's very fitting for the city. There's no lines that your kid's going to pick that are on the verge of embarrassing you at church.
Ryan Reynolds has a few, I would say.
He has a few, but because they cut him off in a specific way, you're safe. Yes. Even if your kid decides to repeat that one line for the rest of eternity, you're still good. You can go to the grocery store with them and you'll be okay. But
I'm pretty good at being alone with myself at night.
That one I think is arguably the worst. But at the same time, it's not the worst one I've seen out of a kids movie. Like, the characters are memorable, and there's enough adult things to occupy you that you'll be able to watch it a couple times before you truly lose your mind.
I feel if they gave this a sequel, I feel it in my jellies that they could do something great with it. I
am very excited for this franchise. And honestly, like, as someone who is a casual Pokemon lover, this was perfect for me.
Yes.
If you're even mildly, or you used to be a Pokemon fan and now you're kind of not in the loop, this one's perfect for you.
Yeah. It has enough of the new, the old, and its own.
Exactly. So I think, and honestly, if you're really not into Pokemon, you don't like Grandma, if you ever listen to this, you don't need to watch this one, Grandma.
No.
This one's not for you unless you're hanging out with the grandkids.
Yeah.
Like that there's a small population who I don't think would like this movie.
No.
But if you're stuck with kids, this is a good pick.
Yeah, I think if the movie industry follows suit, this is probably really the start of good live-action movies.
Oh, I really, really hope so.
Yeah.
Because this could be applied to so many things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
we'll just have to see.
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.